Hello and welcome to Algebra 2, Chapter 6.4, Factoring and Solving Polynomial Equations. So this is a little bit of an extension from typically factoring and solving polynomial equations when we were just really looking at trinomials. So first of all, some basic review on factoring. Remember, anytime you have a trinomial, after looking for greatest common factor, because that is what you should always look for first. Typically a trinomial factors into two binomials. Okay. The only time a binomial factors into two binomials is if you have a difference of squares, and you just need to look for this pattern. Is the first term something squared? Is the second term something squared? Is it a difference? And if so, factors into a plus b, a minus b. And then also your perfect square trinomial. Remember, we talked about the first term being something squared, the last term being something squared. Multiply them together and double it, and if you get that middle term, then it's probably a perfect square trinomial. In addition to those other factorings, we also have some special patterns. We have the sum of two cubes and the difference of two cubes. And so, sum of two cubes might look like x cubed plus 8. And you're just going to need to figure out, okay, this is x that's being cubed. This is 2 that's being cubed. So there's your a and your b. And you're going to put them in wherever you see a's and b's. So that would factor into x plus 2 times x squared minus 2x plus 4. Okay, and if you just look up here as to where I put the a's and the b's. The difference between these two is where the minus sign is. The minus sign is in the trinomial on the sum, and it's in the binomial on the difference. So notice everything else is exactly the same there. Okay, so factoring each polynomial. So, at the beginning you might try to figure out, is this one of the special factors? And so if I'm looking at 125, well, first of all, you might want to look at x. So x is x that's being cubed, okay? So is 125 something cubed? Yes, it is. It is 5 that's being cubed. And so this makes it a sum of two cubes, which you just wrote down. A cubed equals a plus b times a squared minus ab plus b squared. So then this is going to equal 5 plus x, don't switch the order on anything, 25 minus 5x plus x squared. And that's your answer. You just plug in a's and b's where they go. So looking at the next one, okay, well, first of all, what do they have in common? They both have an a. Okay, so if we factor out that a, that'd be a greatest common factor. Remember, it has to stay there. It can't go away. You're looking at 64a cubed minus 27. Okay, now does this factor further. With that a on the outside, I'm thinking this might be something cubed since it's a that's cubed. All right, so 64 is 4 cubed, and so let's do 4a there, and then 27 is 3 cubed. So we're going to keep our a out front, and then this factors into a difference of cubes, which is a minus b times a squared plus ab plus b squared. Okay, and make sure that you can follow that pattern and get that. And then there's your answer. Okay, so, trinomials, you should be fairly comfortable with factoring. Anything more than 3 terms, you are going to factor by grouping. Okay, so here's an example with 4 terms. And so typically in grouping, you're going to group the first 2 terms and the last 2, even though they don't have to be grouped like that. But we're going to look and see, does the first 2 terms, do they share anything? they share an x squared. So if you pull an x squared out of the first two terms, you're left with y squared minus 3. Okay, well, what do the second two terms share? Well, they share a 4, but I want the minus sign to be in the middle of that binomial, not a plus sign. So I'm actually going to pull out a negative 4, which turns the y squared positive, and then minus 3, because if I distribute that negative 4, I'm going to get a negative y squared and a positive 12. And then notice that they both share a y squared minus 3, so we're going to pull the y squared minus 3 to the front, and then what we have left is x squared minus 4. Now, lots of times you might be done, but you need to look at those and see if you can go further, and in fact we can. That second set of parentheses is a difference of squares, which factors into x plus 2, x minus 2. Okay, so here we are, 4 terms. You're looking to see if if you can do any kind of grouping. And so if we look at the first 2 terms as is, do they share anything? They don't. Okay, well, you don't have to keep them in the same order they're given. So what if we rearrange them a little bit? What if we do bx squared plus ax squared and group the x squareds, and then we'll group the 2's. Okay, so all I did was rearrange the order. By the way, it doesn't matter which order you rearrange, you'll eventually get all to the same answer. So now what do the first 2 terms share? They share an x squared with a b plus a left. The second 2 terms share a positive 2 with an a plus b. Well, b plus a, the same thing as a plus b, so let's pull it out front. I'm going to leave it as an a plus b. What's left? X squared plus 2, not a difference of squares. You are done. By the way, you should always be able to FOIL and check your answer. Okay, so if that is important to you, that you want to make sure you did it right, FOIL, and you should always get back to where you came from. Alright, so let's factor 25 x to the 4th minus 36. And if you look at 25 and 36, what type of numbers are they? Well, they're squared numbers. So this is 5 something squared, and this is 6 that's being squared. And so x to the 4th is what squared? It's x squared squared. Because remember, when you have a power to a power, you multiply. Alright, so this is a difference of squares. Okay, so this factors into 5x squared plus 6 and 5x squared minus 6. Okay, and then neither of those factor further. Okay, when we look at the second one here, now it's a trinomial, so you're going to try to factor it into 2 binomials. And you know, this a squared b squared, it can be a little tricky, but if we look at it, now this is AB that's being squared, and this is 4B squared that's being squared. And so if the first term and the last term are both something squared, what you need to try to do is see if it's a perfect square trinomial. If you multiply those together, you're going to get 4AB cubed, okay, right, because you're adding exponents, times that by 2. Is this a perfect square trinomial? Well, it is. Alright, so it has a minus sign in the middle, so we're going to do AB minus 4B squared squared. Perfect square trinomial. Okay, so don't let that x to the 4th fool you, because if you look in the middle and it's an x squared, that just tells me that this is x squared squared, okay? So this is actually a regular, let's FOIL the polynomial, but it has an x squared and an x squared because that's how you make your x squared in the middle. So if we're looking at 21 and 4, we're going to use 7 and 3 plus 7 minus 3. That's going to give us the negative 21 and the positive 4, and that does not factor further. Okay, so solving. Remember that when we solve by factoring, we use what's called the zero product property, which means that we we factor it completely and set each factor equal to 0. So you need to factor this. So I would start out by recognizing that they share a 2y. So if we pull out a 2y, we are left with y to the 4th minus 9. Okay, well, what is y to the 4th minus 9? It's a difference of squares. So we have 2y times y squared minus 3 times y squared plus 3 equals 0. Alright, so that's as factored as we get it. So you're going to set 2y equal to 0, y squared minus 3 equal to 0, and y squared plus 3 equal to 0. So if we divide by 2, we get y equals 0. If we add 3 to both sides, so we get y squared equals 3. Remember, what do you put when you square root? A plus or minus. So we get y equals plus or minus the square root of 3. And we subtract 3, we get y squared equals negative 3. Square root, we get plus or minus I square root of 3. Okay, so there's 5 answers there. And notice it does have a to the 5th power. Alright, so factor, set each factor equal to 0, solve. So, 4 terms. How do we factor 4 terms? We group them. Okay, so I'm going to pull an x cubed out of these first 2, which leaves you with x plus 7. And it looks like we can pull a negative 8 out of the second 2, which is going to leave us with x plus 7. So then if we pull the x plus 7 out front, we have an x cubed minus 8 left over. Well, x cubed minus 8 is a difference of cubes. So on our next step, the x plus 7 stays out front. Difference of cubes, this is x, this is 2. This is going to be x minus 2 times x squared plus AB, which is 2x plus 4 equals 0. Okay, so the next step is to set all 3 of those equal to 0. Alright, so the first 2, fairly easy to solve. You get negative 7. And you get positive 2. But this third one, you can't solve it by factoring because that is not factorable. With 1 and 3 both having the same signs and 2 and 2, you're never going to make 2 in the middle there. So remember though, you have other ways of solving a quadratic because that is what that is a quadratic. You have the quadratic formula, you have completing the square. So it's really what you prefer to do. This one is easy enough. You might complete the square on it, just to remember what completing the square is. So if we move our 4 to the other side, it becomes a negative 4. So remember, your first step, move c to the other side. Second step is take half of b, which is 2, so half of 2 is 1, square it, add that to both sides. Then you're going to factor, this is x plus 1 squared equals negative 3, square root both sides, x plus 1 equals plus or minus I, square root of 3, subtract the 1, x equals negative 1 plus or minus I, square root of 3. So there's our 4 answers, negative 7, positive 2, and negative 1 plus or minus I, square root of 3. Alright, to end with a word problem, an optical company is going to make a glass prism that has a volume of 15 centimeters cubed. The height will be h centimeters, the base will be a right triangle with legs of length h minus 2 centimeters and h minus 3 centimeters. What will be the height? Okay, so glass prism, that the bottom is a right triangle. So when you do any kind of prism, it's always based off the bottom. So there's the bottom, so we're going to extend the bottom. So that's what we're looking for. And remember that the volume of any kind of prism is the base area times the height. And so that B, that capital B, stands for base area. So if I can find the base area and I know the volume, I can solve for height. So the base area is just going to be the area of a triangle. Well, the area of a triangle, 1/2 base times height. So we're looking at 1/2 times the base. Let's call the base h minus 2, and let's call the height h minus 3. Because if it's giving us the two legs, it's given us a base and a height because it's a right triangle. Okay, so I'm going to keep the 1/2 out front at the moment. I'm going to FOIL h squared minus 3h minus 2h is a minus 5h plus 6. So we are looking at the area of the triangle as being 1/2 h squared minus 5/2 h plus 3. So if we come back to our volume formula, the volume is 15 equals the area of the base, h squared minus 5/2 h plus 3 times the height. Okay, so we just need to solve this for h. So the first thing I would do, because remember that you want it equal to 0 most likely, and so let's distribute and have 1/2 h cubed minus 5/2 h squared plus 3h. And we're going to do two steps in once here. We're going to multiply everything by 2, and we're going to bring over the 30 now. Alright, so minus 5h squared plus 6h minus 30, because I moved that 30 over. Okay, so we need to solve this. So we have 4 terms, so the first thing you should think about is grouping. So what do the first two have in common? H squared. Pull that out, you get h minus 5. What do the second two have in common? A 6. Pull that out, you get h minus 5. So we get h minus 5 times h squared plus 6. So if we set both of those equal to 0, you're looking at h minus 5 equals 0 and h squared plus 6 equals 0. So you get h equals 5 from the first one. The second one, you get h squared equals negative 6, which means that when you square root it, you're going to have an I in your answer. You're not going to have the height of a prism that has an I in an answer. So it appears that the height of the prism is 5, and we should probably put a unit on that, centimeters. Okay, there you go. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you in class next time. Have a good day.